these are really good people doing really good work, and it's hard. And sometimes you get it wrong because you're going to get it wrong anywhere. But if you handle it right when you get it wrong, that does a lot too.
Welcome to the Storycraft podcast for storytellers. I'm your host, Meg Adams, and I'm here to help you explore how stories shape our connections. Wondering how stories help you network and advance? Looking to bridge online and face-to-face worlds, foster understanding, and ignite innovation? Look no further. Whether you're a leader, communicator, educator, or just love a good story, join us for actionable insights and real talk with professional storytellers, all aimed at helping you build stronger, better connections.
My first question to start off is to talk about your storytelling career. Was there a moment in time where you realized that you were going to make storytelling your career, and then maybe there wasn't, but then how did you get into journalism, and then where you are now?
Oh, heck yeah, there was totally a moment.
Yes, I love it. There usually is.
Yeah, my moment is unusual. I've told this story a few places before, but I don't think a whole lot of people know it. If you can believe it, I'm one of the weird ones who actually became what she wanted to be when she grew up. And though I think in our industry, especially in broadcast news, I think it's more saturated with people who had wanted to do that for a really long time. Whereas other industries, I think people sort of more fall into their industry. I think a lot of us really had a goal and had to go for it because it's such a cutthroat and different industry. It's not something you can really fall into. So I was like 2 or 3 years old. I can never figure out exactly the age, but I was living in Los Angeles at the time. That was where I was born. And there was a huge earthquake, bad one. And this is like one of my first most vivid memories of my entire life. My mom stuck me under the kitchen table because in earthquakes, you're taught to get, in a door jamb or under something sturdy. Here comes one of my dogs with a squeak toy. Prepare yourself. So I get put under the kitchen table. My mom was like, "Stay there, Sammy. I'm going to go turn on the TV." And I freaked out. I was like, "You can't leave me, Mom. Don't leave me." And she goes, "Honey, I'm just going to turn on the TV. It's right there. They're going to tell us, the news people are going to tell us what's going on." And I instantly stopped crying. And I just remember being like, "Oh, okay, turn that on." And so she turned on the TV and we sat under the kitchen table watching the news anchors talk about the earthquake. And at the time, I thought that news anchors knew when earthquakes were going to happen. And so I wanted to be a news anchor so that I could know when they were going to happen so that I could leave and tell everyone else to leave too. So later I realized that that's not quite how it works. But in a sense, the crux of it was I wanted to know stuff and I wanted to tell other people so that other people could know and that we could get out or be safe or whatever it was. So that's kind of where it started. And then after that, I have always loved writing. I say writing is my superpower. Some people are born with a great voice to sing. I was born to be a writer. And I wrote little stories for my classes, for my teachers. Even when I didn't have an assignment, I would just write little stories and turn them in just to be graded and critiqued. Like in elementary school, it started so young. And then I loved stealing my parents' video camera and taking videos of my friends and of me and doing interviews, not even knowing that's what I was doing. I was just doing these things that all were skills that would one day then come together in the perfect career, which was broadcast news. So my moment was when I was little.
Yeah, I know maybe you've heard this career advice, where people say, "What did you want to do as a child?" Because that's the most pure thing probably that you ever wanted to do, right? So when people are lost, I hear that advice a lot. Say like, "What did you do as a kid?" when nobody asked you to. So thank you for sharing that. I would also like to know, I know that you made a career switch out of journalism recently.
About a year and a half
Is that correct?
ago, mind her. So I was diagnosed with 2 different chronic illnesses when I was 26. I am 32 now. And so at the time, I was a main anchor at an ABC station in South Carolina. I loved it. My career was going exactly how I wanted it to. And then I was diagnosed. We did a story on this condition because it's not rare at all. It's just really poorly understood. And a lot of women suffer from this condition. And takes a long time to get diagnosed. And there are very few specialists for it. There's no FDA approved treatment for it. It's not curable. So it was something I was going to have to just learn to sort of manage the symptoms. And in the beginning, they really couldn't tell me how I was going to do. Was this something that I was going to get a little bit better and it was going to improve and just be more of a mild nuisance? Or was this going to be something that progressed and I continuously got worse? Or was it something in between? And you really don't know because there's just not a whole lot known. Um, and so for me, it never crossed my mind when I was diagnosed that this would end my TV career. Never. I mean, not even like there wasn't even a percentage of my brain that thought that would happen. I just thought, well, I'm me. I get through everything. I'm tough. I can handle it. I'll figure it out. And surely I won't be one of the ones who gets worse. How ignorant and selfish. But anyway, so I ended up I have specialists at the Mayo Clinic, Stanford, and Vanderbilt. So these are top doctors on this condition. And I finally realized after a few years that if I had this level of resources available to me and I still wasn't getting any better, this was probably something that I needed to really consider. Considering going to work was becoming really, really hard. I was doing it. I think my coworkers would never have known how hard it was. But I ended up routing my career originally to Knoxville because there was a main anchor opening there and director of storytelling, which was my title as a manager, which I loved. Job opens up in Knoxville and I'm like, perfect, I'll go there. It's 2 hours from Vanderbilt, which is where my main doctor is. My sister's in Nashville. This is perfect. I'm managing illness and career. So I go to Knoxville and pretty quickly realized that I just couldn't do this job anymore. I was sleeping in my car on lunch breaks, and people didn't know that. I would like disappear from the newsroom for like an hour, and nobody knew where I was going every day. I was asleep in my car because if I didn't take that nap, my neurological symptoms would flare up and I would have trouble reading the teleprompter on the news at night or doing a live interview and getting my thoughts straight. So it just became really torture to try to do that. And I realized I needed to create a job in which that worked for my symptoms. I had currently created a world where my symptoms could not exist well. So I left news for that reason, for health reasons. And thankfully, I scored like the most perfect possible job for me ever. I say if I had to leave news, which I did, this was the most perfect gig I could have gotten outside of news. So now I work for the United States Department of Energy. They have a site in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is East Tennessee. So I still live in Knoxville, where I had moved, so I didn't have to move. I work from home 3 days a week, and then 2 days I'm in office. So this is much more manageable symptom wise because when I'm at home, obviously, I can be doing my work lying down or in the bathtub. People know that I work from my bathtub a lot. So a coworker will call and they'll go, "There's a little echo. Are you in the bathtub?" And I'll go, "Yeah." But it's become just like that's how I've learned to manage this condition. I am still fully capable of working a full-time job. It just has to be one where I can do the weird little things I need to do to try to help myself feel well enough to execute the job, which I can now. So that is my full-time job, and I was hired to basically ramp up their visual efforts. So I launched a monthly newscast for them called Energy Cast, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And that airs on more than 20 local stations in Tennessee. So we've gotten it on air. And it also, of course, goes on our YouTube and our Facebook. And then I'm like a reporter anchor for the Department of Energy. I tell stories on nuclear, environmental, medical, all the stuff that's happening out there at the nuclear site and Oak Ridge National Lab and all these places. Those are the things I'm covering. And then I put together stories for the newscast, produce and anchor the newscast. And that's kind of my biggest job. Then from there, I also teach a multimedia reporting class at the University of Tennessee. So I do that Tuesdays and Thursdays. And this sounds like a lot. And it is a lot. And people joke with me. They're like, you left one job for like five. And I did, but the interesting thing is I'm able to do so much more because number one, I'm not stuck to those strict news hours. And number two, I have a flexible schedule. I feel better because I can do these things that manage my illness that I could not do in news. You can't anchor the news lying down. At least not at this point. Maybe someone one day will make a horizontal news set. Yeah. So we joke someone just needs to come up with a horizontal news set for me and I'll come back to the industry. But so I teach, I work full time for DOE, I teach, and then I'm also a producer on a true crime documentary. Miraculously, right around the time I was leaving, making the decision to leave news, a filmmaker out of Chicago, film company, reached out to me and they had seen my work, my reporting on a crime that had happened back in South Carolina. And originally, he just wanted to interview me for the story they were working on. And then he said, we really need a producer, and you are so well connected. And I see you're the director of storytelling at your station. Would you want to produce this thing? And I was like, well, perfect timing. I'm leaving my job in like a month. So yeah. So I do that on weekends.
So it seems like
Oh,
your
yeah.
work ethic has followed you. That's so interesting. So I was so excited to talk to you, Summer, because I had been following like little pieces of this storytelling work that you've done. And, you know, in my research, I'm really looking at how storytellers, what are we doing to help people connect, right? I know that a lot of what storytelling does, as you mentioned, you know, with the news, you're just putting information out there, as you mentioned in those stories. But with the Department of Energy, and I think as journalists, other stories as well, there really is a chance for people to connect and build community. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how your work has done that, like internally, so inside as team, and then also like externally, so within like with marketing and with the outside community. And you can talk about that in any facet of your career, what you're doing now. Because I, as you're talking, I'm like, I'm sure there are lots of instances where you've seen that.
That's actually the number one reason they created my position at DOE, and the number one reason we started the show that we have was to give a little bit of background, because I think that I can answer this really, really well, specifically for why I do what I do. Um, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, if you look this up, that's where the Manhattan Project took place, which was part of creating our first atomic bomb in the United States. So we have a lot of top secret stuff that happened in Oak Ridge years and decades and decades ago. This was this random kind of mountainous valley area of the United States in Tennessee, and the United States needed to create the atomic bomb. They needed a place to do this stuff, and they found this spot in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, protected by the mountaintops, and they thought, right there, that's where we're doing it. And so people from all across the United States came to Oak Ridge to work, to find work working on this atomic bomb. At the time, they were not allowed to talk about it. They couldn't talk about the work they did. It was top secret. So you had women and men, and at the time that was unheard of. Like women were working on the calutrons, which are these big machines that had to do with the atomic bomb. And they didn't even know what they were working on at the time. So it was so incredibly secretive that then decades later, obviously the Manhattan Project is over and done. Now we are left with a lot of these buildings out there from the Manhattan era that are damaging the environment. They're unsafe, they're contaminated. And so the Department of Energy has had to go in and clean this all up, basically, take care of what used to be there. And the work that's happening there now is not top secret anymore. I mean, some of it is still, but we're not working on an atomic bomb out here. So, so people, people don't really, for the most part, we do have Y-12 National Security Complex. They are a defense complex, so they are much more secretive. But for the most part, the work that's happening out here now doesn't have to be a secret anymore because of national security. This is stuff we can talk about. And I think that in this community, you've got a lot of people who are here because their grandparents moved here to work on this project. And now they're left in this community going, okay, what's happening out there? What are they doing? Is the water safe? All these things. Well, we need to be talking about that, and we can now. And so they needed to find a way to reach not only the community and go, okay, here's what we're doing. We can talk about it now. Here's what we're doing. Here's what the work looks like. They needed to be able to make that make sense. I work with a lot of engineers and scientists who are very, very smart, and I need to be the translator. It's exactly what I did in journalism. Journalists are translators a lot of times. And so I have to, number one, pull out some personality in these people and make them relatable and make their work understandable so that our community now understands what's happening in their backyard. And then in addition to that, our job is funded. This is federal work, so this is federal funds. So this is taxpayer dollars. They have a right to know what's going on. And number two, the politicians who fund this work, you have to remember, our politicians didn't necessarily go into engineering. And they're the ones who are responsible for making these decisions about funding. So my stories, the stories that I tell, also are explaining this sometimes to our lawmakers so that they can go, why are we funding this? Why does DOE need this funding? Oh, here, watch this story. This will make it make sense. So our work is very much split 50-50 in terms of a need for the community to understand the work happening in their community and a need for our lawmakers to understand so that it can be funded properly and they can make responsible decisions. And then internally, it simply builds morale. Like, people are so proud to have their work shown. Like, I did a really cool story on, this is something you just never would have been highlighted. It was called the Water Warriors, and they're literally this team of coworkers, and their job when it rains in East Tennessee, which happens a lot, if we get a big rain downpour, they have to go out there all hours and make sure that the landfills are safe and nothing's like leaking water or any bad groundwater anywhere. And they essentially manage all of that. And so they call them the Water Warriors. And so I did a story on them, and like, they were pumped about it. Like, they do a really cool, important job. So that one again had so many purposes. Number one, it built morale. They were so proud to do the work they do. So we got to recognize employees internally and let the rest of our team know what they're doing, which is just cool. Then number two, the community gets to now understand the safety measures that are being taken out here, which is vital. They have a right to know that. And then number three, our lawmakers can look at that and go, oh, that's where the money's going. I get it now.
Love what you're hearing on this podcast? Consider booking me to speak at your next event. Dive further into the transformative power of storytelling with my keynote. Tell better stories, speak up, stand out, and build community. In a world that often amplifies our differences, my talk invites you to embrace genuine connections. Break free from the echo chambers and discover the art of storytelling. Learn how to share your own narrative, listen actively, and foster communities that flourish on shared experiences. Check out the show notes to learn more about how to book a talk for your next event.
I think it's indicative, like the story that you told, but also the cultural moment that we're in, where people really don't trust the media, using air quotes, and they don't trust industry either, right? And so I wonder, one of my fears where we are right now in this moment is, how do we build up trust? How do we help people understand again, that connection, but also how do we build a stronger democracy, a stronger culture, a stronger society, and stronger communities? And the stories that you just told seem to be like, hey, here's a solution at how we can start to, kind of scrape away at some of the damage that's been done, especially, I would say through COVID, but I think over time, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I think, when I was in news, one of my favorite things was a good old ethical discussion. I loved it. And I took that very seriously. And it was really sad, I would say, and really devastating as a journalist to see how society became so volatile and so aggressive toward journalists, and about media. And knowing the people who work in news and knowing what great people, like the majority are, and what they're doing, the work they're doing, it was so defeating feeling, because it was like, no, you guys have it all wrong. These are really good people doing really good work, and it's hard. And sometimes you get it wrong because you're going to get it wrong anywhere. But if you handle it right when you get it wrong, that does a lot too. So I think one of the things, for instance, that I teach my journalism class is, and one of the things that I've brought to DOE, I teach transparency. And that doesn't just mean in the stories we cover. That means in how we are covering them. Pull back the curtain, tell the viewer how you arrived at the decision to show this story. How did you come to the decision to interview these people, and why did we tell it the way we told it? I think the viewers are interested in that. And I think that that will help build that trust back because they don't know how we make coverage decisions and how it works if someone says no to an interview, but we still need to run some sort of story. So in terms of transparency, that means how our work works and how we operate. In terms of transparency at the Department of Energy, this is a government organization. And I always tell them, you got to remember I'm a former journalist. I said to them, I don't want a PR job. I am not the person that the media contacts. My boss is. Or he's the Fed, I'm a contractor. So technically he's my client, but we're really close. So it feels weird to say client and whatever. We're funny about it. So I said to them, I never want to do PR. I just want to be honest and tell stories. And that's what I get to do. So I found the perfect PR job where I don't have to, I've never felt my message or my stories were routed a certain way. They've always been honest and just the story.
As we think through certain things, do you think that there is an opportunity for more journalists or even people who are in public relations and maybe marketing right now to understand that there is power in honest storytelling? It sounds like that's what you're saying. But then do you have any advice for people who maybe aren't trained in journalism that would because there are all kinds of opportunities in digital media. I'm older than you, but when I was in college and trained as a journalist, it was either print journalism or TV. It was right on the cusp of digital media. And now I think there are a lot of opportunities to tell stories, through video and using these journalistic methods. So do you have any advice for people who want to integrate some of that work potentially into the marketing or PR space?
So I love this question. And I'm going to answer in a way that some may find offensive. Welcome to interviewing a former journalist. I'll always be honest. Okay, so here's my big answer to that is people can smell bullshit. Do not give them bullshit. I can't stand it. And there's so much bullshit in marketing and PR. And it doesn't have to be that way. Great marketing, great advertising is a great story, and you don't even realize you have just seen an advertisement. We don't need to shove the message down the throat of the person watching. We need to bring them along on a story, and suddenly they've arrived at that message through the story, and that will stick with them because they feel that. If you are simply running some sort of video that's like, our team won this, that, and the other thing, and we are very safe, and we do this, that, and here's our CEO to tell you why. I can't handle it. So the way to do that, and that feels phony. Who believes that? Who's going to believe that? You have a random voice telling you this, and then the CEO who's supposed to say what he's supposed to see, or he or she is supposed to say, who's going to believe that? What they're going to believe is a story with people and characters who are showing you what is happening, and you're feeling that, and you're like, wow, that is how you do it.
That when you involve your employees or when you involve the storyteller, the story is more pure. I kind of hear you saying that too. So I didn't know if you could talk about how maybe coming into DOE, as a journalist, how did you build those relationships with the engineers and the scientists and all kinds of people who weren't used to probably having somebody come in and produce the type of stories?
I went in, I first of all, I knew I could not survive in a job that I didn't believe in what I was doing. I just couldn't. I was such a hardcore journalist and so believed in our jobs as journalists that I knew that I would not last in any sort of role where I felt like I didn't have control over my own voice and the stories I was telling. And again, I ended up in the perfect spot because they absolutely allow me to tell the stories the way that I feel they should be told, and the way I was trained to tell stories, which was in an honest, newsworthy manner. So when I got there, it was jarring at first because, and I actually literally, if you look at my Facebook page, I just posted something about this morning, where sometimes okay, like the first day, one of the first week at DOE, I'm walking down the hallways, and my boss would introduce me to people, and they'd go, "Oh, you're the famous person we hired." And I was like, I go, "Thanks for watching." And so I think a lot of people knew about me before I got there because I was the news anchor who was coming, and it was like, there I think some people are like, "Why the heck did we hire a news anchor?" And then I think other people were like, "This is so cool. There's a news anchor here." So, and I consistently run into that. I can kind of tell when someone like thinks it's really cool and they're a little bit starstruck, and then when they meet me and they're like, "Why the heck is she here? What is she doing? Why did we hire that?" And so, um, but I think now because of Energy Cast and because they've now seen examples of the work that we're doing and they like this, it's fun to see your coworkers, they're starting to get behind it and they're like, oh, that's cool. So, in order to get people a little bit more comfortable and whatnot, one of the things I do is I am transparent with them from the start. I think so often when, especially newer reporters, are setting up stories, they're doing it in such a business manner because they don't know better and they're cold, nervous, and jerky. And they're like, "Hi, well, you to do an interview with me at 3 o'clock today." And it's like, you need to be warm about it. Yeah, yeah. Like, these people are not trained to be on camera. They're just going to work doing their lab job today or their cleanup work in in the field, and they aren't used to having a camera around. They have no training in this. And so I'll say, I'm going to talk you through everything. I know it sounds really scary, but it's just me and I edit everything and I'm going to talk you through it. We'll just have a quick conversation. That's all it is. I promise. And I'll usually throw in something quirky like, I'm going to make you look really good, I swear, because you're doing really cool stuff. And I just feel like the whole world should know about this. And then either they'll like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Okay, whatever. So just having that transparency up front with about what to expect from our interview, how it's going to go, that makes them a lot less scared and a lot more comfortable around me. And then we get better sound bites because they're comfortable. So taking that transparency throughout the entire process, not just in the final result, to get the people on camera takes transparency. And that's something that I think people are getting more used to that now, and now it's becoming more like, is Summer going to come to that event? Is she going to cover that? So I've already seen in the year that I've been there, it turn a little bit, the shift turn. So it's less, the vibe is less, oh, there's the random news anchor with her camera again. And it's more like, oh, there's Summer with her camera again.
Okay, we had to pause the podcast to let you in on this opportunity. If you're ready to elevate your brand storytelling, don't miss our training, Tell Better Stories, led by me, a seasoned television journalist and PR professor, and Kyle, an on-air meteorologist and video storytelling expert. This workshop unveils our secrets to craft compelling, personal-driven narratives that resonate with your audience. Learn our distinct approach that puts people first and brands second, leveraging 6 storytelling elements for maximum impact. Walk away with actionable strategies, tactics, and a clear process to replicate success in any organization. Check out the show notes to learn more about this offer or reach out to homeplacecreative@gmail.com. Another benefit of storytelling I'm hearing you speak to is the team building possibilities. How do you see storytelling work as a way to get teams invested in company culture?
Yeah, and I think that bringing everybody together to be almost part of the project that we're doing has also made them more comfortable. So, you've got, like you mentioned, we've got politicians who have to understand this work, and then we've got the public who has to understand this work, and then we have the people doing the work. And even within them, some of them don't understand what the left and right are doing because it's a massive thing out here. These are all different kinds of scientists and leadership and whatnot. And so not everybody understands what that job does, and they don't have to. It's all, as much as we're all a team, some things are still independent of each other. And so one of the things that we've done, and again, I just posted this on my Facebook this morning, was we have a giant banner with my face on it in the middle of the federal building. Oh, God. And I feel super weird about it, but it wasn't my idea. I'll just throw that out there too. I'm not that obsessed with myself, but it was one of my coworkers. We were trying to conjure up news tips, and we've sent out emails that are like, send in your news tips, your story ideas for Energy Cast, and we get some that way. But I think you get so many emails. Who's reading emails? So we had to find a way to reach people. And apparently the best way to do that was my giant face in the middle of the hallway. So there's now a big built like a poster board with my face and sticky notes and a pen and a little envelope. It actually looks really cute. And people can write their news tip on it and put it in the envelope. And then we'll check the envelope every now and then. So, but making it interactive in that way has now empowered people to be part of our storytelling. And that in turn allows us to tell more stories, which is the goal. So I think people can tell their own stories on social media all they want, but I think that that's their little audience. This gives them a chance to be part of a bigger audience, and I think that in itself has built trust, both within our industry, between our lawmakers, and between our community and us.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I've got some rapid fire questions for you. First one, what's your favorite story of all time? Film, book, song, whatever.
That's so hard. Oh, wow. Okay. Favorite storytelling, little documentary. Um, I really liked the staircase. The staircase was really good, and then I can't remember the name of it, the one that just came out about the missing Malaysia Airlines flight. That one was fascinating.
Okay, next, what's a piece of storytelling advice so good you want to shout it from the rooftops or so bad you have to warn everyone about it?
Okay, I know the bad one. Let me think of the best piece of storytelling advice I've ever heard. The best piece of storytelling advice obviously comes from Boyd Hubert. And I think that I think it was him. I believe it was Boyd Hubert who said leave breadcrumbs for your viewer throughout your story to keep them wanting to, keep going. And I understand what that means now, to, keep revealing little things and to keep wanting to watch. And that makes a great story. So I really liked that piece of advice for storytelling. The worst piece of storytelling is from anyone in the industry who says false present tense is okay. It is not okay. Network's doing it wrong. I can't stand it. It's unnatural. Stop talking like that. And it also just is like not conversational at all. Why would we want our news anchors to be conversational? Why are we talking like this? Stop it.
Last question, Summer. Define storytelling in your own words.
Oh, I think there is nothing more powerful than storytelling, and that's not just to boost my own ego. I actually had this conversation with my boss the other day. Specifically, journalists, tell me what job in America is more powerful than being a journalist. Think about it. There is nothing, in my opinion, more powerful than journalism. You are more powerful than the president because your job is to hold the president accountable. You are more powerful than the richest man in the world because your job is to figure out where the funds are going. And you have all the power as journalists to literally take down someone's career and take down someone's life. And I say that to remind people how truly powerful that job is and how responsible you have to be to do it. It is not a job to be taken lightly. There's a reason that it is protected. There's a reason that our country was built with freedom of the press as a principle of democracy. So storytelling is the most powerful thing we have. It's also what gets passed down from generations to generations within your own family. Your stories matter. Your stories are your reputation as a person. They are the only thing you leave behind when you die. And your stories as companies are the only way you get to show your clients and your customers what they're buying into. And that is also your reputation. And then your stories as um, government entities, politicians, whatever, that's how you create your person. And story you leave is history, and that matters too. So I do not think there is anything more powerful than storytelling.
We're so glad you've listened to this podcast episode. If you liked it, would you mind doing us a favor? Share this episode with someone who would be interested in the topic too. We're on a mission to help everyone become a better storyteller. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get updated every time we release a new episode. Each and every episode is produced, hosted, and edited by us, Meg and Kyle Adams at Home Place Creative. Happy storytelling!
It's exactly what I did in journalism. Journalists are translators a lot of times. And so I have to, number one, pull out some personality in these people and make them relatable and make their work understandable so that our community now understands what's happening in their backyard. And then in addition to that, our job is funded. This is federal work. So this is federal funds. So this is taxpayer dollars. They have a right to know what's going on. And number two, the politicians who fund this work, you have to remember our politicians didn't necessarily go into engineering. And they're the ones who are responsible for making these decisions about funding. So my stories, the stories that I tell, also are explaining this sometimes to our lawmakers so that they can go, why are we funding this? Why does DOE need this funding? Oh, here, watch this story. This will make it make sense.